Hello, good evening, and thank you for joining today's webinar on the Lower Thames Crossing Design Refinement Consultation. Today, we're going to be providing you with an overview of the proposed refinements to the Lower Thames Crossing with a particular focus on refinements in Kent. To be clear, this is not an exhaustive view of every proposed refinement. Rather, we're providing you with an overview of some of the more notable refinements made to our proposals since our supplementary consultation earlier on this year. So we'll start off by introducing ourselves briefly. My name's Sarah Walker, and I'm the Communications and Engagement Lead for Highways England, and I'll be moderating today's webinar.
Hello everyone, I'm Steve Roberts and I'm the Engineering Design Lead for Lower Thames Crossing, and I'll be running through many of our proposed refinements today, as well as helping to answer your questions a little later on.
Hi, I'm Gary Hodge, Technical Lead for the Lower Thames Crossing project, and I'll be helping to answer many of the questions that are asked today.
We've also got Charlotte and Emily with us today, who you can see on camera throughout the webinar. They're British Sign Language interpreters and will be providing sign language translation for those in attendance who are deaf or have hearing impairments. Should you wish to expand the view of the BSL interpreters at any time, simply hover your mouse over their camera and click the button to expand. Similarly, should you wish to turn off the BSL interpreter video, then hover your mouse over their camera and click the X as normal. Lastly, we have our colleague David, who he's helping us today behind the scenes to ensure this webinar gets successfully to your screens. And in case we get any technical difficulties today, you may just hear one of us asking him to progress the webinar onwards and help us out. Okay, so today we're going to look to provide you with an introduction to the Lower Thames Crossing project and give you an overview of why we're consulting again. We'll also let you know how you can find out more information and how to submit an official response to the consultation. At the end of today's session, we'll be holding a question and answer session where we'll be taking and answering the questions about the design refinement consultation, and we're going to show you how to do that right now. Today, we're looking to focus the question and answer session on the design refinement consultation itself. If you've got any questions about the project in general that fall outside of that, please email info@lowerthamescrossing.co.uk. Should you have any questions pertaining to any land interest that Highways England has written to you about, then please contact us directly using our telephone surgery service. The number for that is 0300 123 5000. To ask a question today, please look on your screen for a question mark button or click the field that says questions. You can then type in your question at any point during the webinar today. Excuse me. We'll be getting to your questions after we run you through the proposed refinements, and your questions will only be visible to you and the project team here on the webinar. We may not have time to get to everybody's questions today, but we'll do our best. If your question isn't answered, then we'd encourage you to book a callback using our telephone surgery service. Callbacks can be booked on our website, excuse me, and the web address for that is www.lowerthamescrossing.co.uk/design-consultation. Or of course, you can call us on 0300 123 5000. Okay. So just to recap on that, that video, I think, have we seen a video? No, we haven't seen a video. With videos coming up. Lower Thames Crossing is a proposed new road connecting Kent, Thurrock and Essex through two 2.6-mile tunnels beneath the River Thames. It would almost double capacity across the river east of London, boosting local, regional and national economies, while offering new connections, better journeys and fewer delays. On the south side of the river, the new road would link to the A2 and the M2 in Kent. On the north side, it would link to the A13 in Thurrock and the M25 in Havering. We're proposing a number of refinements to the design of the Lower Thames Crossing based on feedback that we've received during previous consultations, from engagement with our stakeholders, and of course from ongoing design work. We now also have a far better understanding of some of the technical constraints, including new information about existing utilities. So some of the proposed refinements include a reduction in the overall size of the development boundary, minor changes to the highway's design, updated paths for pedestrians, cyclists and horse riders, fewer utilities diversions, more detailed landscaping proposals and further developed ecological mitigation measures. You can, of course, respond to this consultation in a number of ways, either through our website, by post, or by email. If you know anyone who doesn't have access to the internet or who doesn't want to use the internet, they're also able to call us on 0300 123 5000 to provide a response to the consultation over the phone. We're now going to go straight into the refinements with a short video that will show you the changes south to north along the section of the route that we're covering today.
Based on feedback from previous consultations, engagement with our stakeholders, design, development, and new technical data, we're now proposing a number of refinements to the design of the Lower Thames crossing. We're currently holding a further round of consultation, which means that until 11:59 p.m. on the 12th of August 2020, you'll have the opportunity to view and comment on those latest proposals. Your feedback is vitally important in making sure we get all aspects of design, construction and operation of this scheme right, and your responses will play a fundamental role in firming up our plans for the Lower Thames crossing. In this video, I want to give you a brief introduction of some of the key design refinements that we're proposing in Kent. Following the feedback you gave us during our supplementary consultation, we've continued to work closely with stakeholders, including utilities companies, to reduce our impact on environmentally sensitive locations. We've now refined the land required for utility diversions in the A2 area that would reduce the impact of our work on Shorn and Ashenbank Woods, Jeskins Community Woodland and around Clay Lane Wood. Because we've refined the design of utility diversions in areas along the route, it means our overall development boundary, which is the land we need to construct the scheme, has reduced in size. This means that the number of properties inside the development boundary has nearly halved. You can see more details on this in our consultation documents online and in our virtual exhibition. If your property is in or near the development boundary, we will have written to you directly, but if you've got any questions, please do get in touch. Around the M2-A2 junction, we further developed our landscaping proposals and made some key refinements to structures over the route. Over the A2, Brewers Road and Thong Lane, green bridges would be slightly realigned to combine green spaces at each location and provide better connectivity for the landscape, ecology and habitats. We're proposing a new electricity switching station at Thong Lane. This would be required to distribute electricity to all new and existing smaller substations along the Lower Thames crossing route. The position of the Lower Thames crossing to the south of Thong Lane would also be raised between 2 and 3 metres to improve driver visibility. Thong Lane Green Bridge over the Lower Thames crossing would also move approximately 20 metres north to avoid clashing with a proposed gantry and allow us to plant more trees, something that was previously restricted by overhead electrical cables. The bridge would also be raised by less than half a metre due to the Lower Thames crossing carriageway realignment. We're proposing a new informal parking area to the east of Thong Lane. This would help ease the current parking issues along Brewers Road and help increase capacity for those visiting Shorn Woods Country Park. We've also refined and updated our proposals for new walking, cycling and horse riding paths in the vicinity of the Lower Thames crossing. We've carried out detailed noise assessments and have identified locations along the route where noise barriers could be used to reduce the sound of traffic for local communities. Further details on these proposed locations of the noise barriers can be found in our consultation documents and maps online and in our virtual exhibition. These are just some of the design refinements we're consulting on. To view and comment on all the latest proposals, please visit the Lower Thames Crossing website, explore our online exhibition, and of course follow us on Facebook and Twitter for updates. This consultation is an important opportunity for you to have your say before we submit our development consent order application later on this year. So please do submit a response online, by free post, email, or simply by calling us. Thank you for watching.
Hello everyone, it's Steve Roberts here again. Thank you, Sarah, for the introduction. So to complement the video you've just watched, we'll now run through the refinements in a little more depth. We'll start off by covering some of the key themes regarding the development boundary, environmental impacts, landscaping and utilities. And then we'll dive into the refinements on a junction by junction basis. So we'll start by discussing the development boundary. Okay, so we have the development boundary map on the screen right now, and we've been able to reduce the amount of land required by around 12.5% by refining the design of the utility diversions in some areas along the route. Within this revised development boundary, there's now some additional land that will be required permanently, whereas other areas like construction sites will only be needed temporarily, with any land being reinstated and returned to its owner once construction is complete. If your property is affected by the scheme, you should have been written to already. If you have received a letter, please feel free to give us a call to discuss it on 0300 123 5000. That's 0300 123 5000. Okay, so on to environmental impacts now. Following feedback from our supplementary consultation, we've been able to refine the land required for utility diversions that we presented at supplementary consultation. And in doing so, we've been able to reduce the impacts to various wooded areas, particularly in the area around the M2A2 junction. With regards to green bridges, we've improved our landscaping proposals, resulting in better opportunity for ecological connectivity. This means that since the green bridges feature plant life, hedgerows, shrubs, trees, grassland, etc. in the design, it'll be more attractive for wildlife to use as a crossing point. To help mitigate noise, we've now introduced some noise barriers in areas where higher noise levels and disturbances are anticipated, and we're going to cover that in a bit more detail later. On to landscaping. We've progressed the design of the Lower Thames Crossing. We've developed more detailed landscaping proposals to mitigate the visual impacts of the project's above ground infrastructure. Since supplementary consultation, we've added more detail on the specific type of ecological mitigation proposed across the route, such as grassland, woodland, and further refinements around watercourses. We'll also provide some updates on new proposed landforms and new viewpoints. Turning now to our utility proposals, we've continued to refine our proposals for utility diversions across the route and are now proposing some further changes to the position presented at supplementary consultation. Some of the more notable updates include the need for small substations along the route, as well as a switching station near the Thong Lane Green Bridge over the A2. The substations will be approximately 3 meters wide by 3 meters long and around 2.5 meters in height. The number and locations of the substations will be confirmed following further design work and continued engagement with our stakeholders. So we'll now dive into some of the refinements south of the river. Just to be clear, I think as Sarah said earlier, it's not an exhaustive overview of every proposed refinement. Rather, we're providing you with an overview of some of the more notable refinements that we've made to our proposals since our supplementary consultation earlier this year. Okay, so on the screen right now is an image depicting the M2A2 junction as we presented it at supplementary consultation. And we'll now show you what we're proposing for this design refinement consultation. And we'll switch back and forth between the two so you can see the changes. So what you may have noticed are the differences such as the additional noise barriers, a change to utility diversions, and changes to our planting proposals. So we'll go into a bit more detail on those next. Starting with noise barriers. Sorry, Dave, please can I ask you to go back one slide? Thank you very much. So starting with noise barriers, the first refinement that we'd like to highlight is the introduction of some noise barriers near Thong Lane over Lower Thames Crossing, alongside the M2A2 near the Inn on the Lake and Shawn Wood Country Park, and along the M2A2 near Brewers Wood. You can see some of these indicated on the image on screen as points 1A, B, and 1C. Moving on to design, the Thong Lane Green Bridge over the A2, the green space will now be amalgamated to improve landscape and ecological connectivity. This is just out of view of this image towards the right-hand side. So due to utility diversions required within Clay Lane Wood, the ancient woodland compensation in this area will be reduced. As a result, we would increase the proposed ancient woodland compensation planting to the north on the edge of Gravesend as much as is reasonably practicable. Landscaping in Brewers Wood and Great Crabble's Wood areas will be designed to connect both woodlands and proposed replacement open land. At Shawn Woods, we've redesigned the block planting layout to better reflect the landscape and accommodate proposed utility works. We've also reduced proposed ancient woodland compensation to the south of the High Speed 1 railway line due to a cultural heritage building and to maintain open space. This is due to the fact that fewer utility works are now required in this area. So moving now to utilities, a new switching station is required to distribute electricity to all new and existing smaller substations along the Lower Thames Crossing route. We're currently working with the utility company on the final design that will be submitted as part of our development consent order application. And aside from the switching station, in this area there are also a number of proposed overhead power line diversions and upgrades in the areas of Riverview Park and Thong Lane, as well as a short extension to a gas diversion along Valley Drive. We've been working with our stakeholders, including the utility companies, to refine our proposals and minimise the land required for works. This in turn reduces impacts on environmentally sensitive locations. So now we'll take a particular focus on the refinements made at the Thong Lane Green Bridge over Lower Thames Crossing. So Thong Lane Bridge over Lower Thames Crossing, it will be moving 20 metres north to avoid clashing with the proposed gantry and to allow for tree planting that was previously restricted by overhead power lines. The bridge would also be raised by around ½ a metre as a result of an alignment change in Lower Thames Crossing. This is all represented on the image as point 1. We've also improved the Lower Thames Crossing alignment, and this will result in Lower Thames Crossing being raised south of Thong Lane Green Bridge. This is to improve driver visibility, and it's shown as point number 2 on the image. So moving now to utilities in this area, as shown on the image on screen as point 1, we plan to have a substation located behind the southern tunnel entrance. Our landscaping proposals around this substation will help to integrate the infrastructure into the existing landscape and to mitigate the visual impact. We've also refined the utility diversions in the area as shown by point 2. And due to the proposed changes described earlier to the Thong Lane Green Bridge over Lower Thames Crossing, we're seeking to move the overhead power line diversion in this area by around 235 metres to the south. And this will mean that it will move away from Riverview Park and closer to Thong. So shown as point 1 on the image, we've added a new parking area near Thong Lane Green Bridge. It will be easily accessible by residents of Gravesend, and there are footpaths linking the proposed parking area to Shoreham Woods. The new paths remain as shown in our proposals at supplementary consultation, which you'll see in subsequent slides. So taking a look at changes to shared paths, as a result of Thong Lane Green Bridge over Lower Thames Crossing moving 20 metres north, the shared path on this bridge has also moved, and this is reflected on the map on screen in the purple colour. So just to recap on those refinements that we've covered, the map on screen is also on pages 26 to 27 and 28, 29 of your design refinement consultation guide, by the way. So if you've got that to hand. Number 2 on this map is where the Thong Lane Green Bridge over Lower Thames Crossing is proposed to move 20 metres north. Number 3 is the informal parking area to the east of Thong Lane Green Bridge. Number 4 shows where the alignment of Lower Thames Crossing has been raised south of Thong Lane Green Bridge over Lower Thames Crossing. Points 9 through to 12 help to show the utility upgrade works for existing overhead power lines. Number 10 shows the location of the proposed new 33 kilovolt permanent electricity switching station, which is off Thong Lane near the M2A2. And number 13 shows where landscaping would take place around a proposed substation. Points 14 through to 18 help to show where we're proposing to reconfigure the woodland compensation. And finally, points 19 through to 22 show where we propose to place noise barriers as part of our noise mitigation strategy. And that's all from me. Back to Sarah now.
Thanks, Steve. Thank you for that run through of the proposed refinements along the Kent side of the route. As we mentioned at the start of our webinar, our goal today is to provide you with an overview of some of the more notable refinements made to the proposal since our supplementary consultation last year. If you'd like more information or more detail on the proposed refinements, we do suggest visiting our website, www.lowerthamescrossing.co.uk/design-consultation. And there you can access a digital copy of the guide to design refinement consultation, as well as a host of other consultation materials, including some detailed maps, etc. So do take a look on that website. We're now going to take a very quick break for 3 minutes, and then we're going to be right back to run through some of those questions that you've submitted before and throughout this webinar event. And just to remind you that we're going to be focusing tonight's questions, of course, on the Kent side of the route that we're focusing on this evening, and on the design refinement consultation. We'll take a look at that video now. Again, and thanks everyone for staying with us through that short break. As a reminder, the consultation runs until the 12th of August. And aside from this webinar, you can find out all the information that you might need on our consultation website, lowerthamescrossing.co.uk/design-consultation. Using the website or, of course, Highways England's contact centre on 0300 123 5000. You can also schedule a callback with a member of the team to ask any question that you might have regarding any of the refinements. And of course, you can also submit a request for printed materials if you prefer using any of these methods. Okay, we're just going to take a quick moment now to remind you how you can submit a question to today's Q&A session. And remember that this evening we're focusing on the south side of the river, on the Kent section, and on the refinements to the design refinement consultation. Depending on how you're watching the webinar, your view might look like one of three options on the screen now. Just take a look for where the question area is. Indicated by the red circle, and that's where you type your question. Get to all those remain unanswered, don't worry, we would encourage you to book a callback using our telephone surgery service. Callbacks can be booked on the website, I think you know the web address by now, and you can call us, of course, on 0300 123 5000. Okay, we'll be focusing today's Q&A session, as I said, in the areas of Lower Thames Crossing south of the river. So I'm just going to check now what our first question is. And this appears to be a question about the parking area, which Steve mentioned in his presentation. Gary, I don't know if you could pick up, there's obviously someone's got some concerns about this area. A number of questions all wrapped into one. What data have you gathered to evidence the need for the parking area? That's one part of it. Who would be responsible for maintaining the parking area to prevent things like fly tipping and illegal camping? And will the parking area be chargeable? Not sure we know that yet, but perhaps you can give some detail on that, Gary.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. It was mainly local stakeholders told us that there were parking issues along Brewers Road and the visitors to Shoreham Woods Country Park Visitor Centre. So that's where predominantly we got the feedback from. The car parks, it's to provide another point to explore the local area. There will be 50 car parking spaces. And relating to the future ownership, initially Highways England will own it, but we'll be seeking a partner to maintain it for the longer term, and that'll include managing fly tipping, trespassing, antisocial behaviour. But the future owner and maintainer will be responsible for deciding if there is any charge. So I think that's really all I can add to that one.
Oh, that's great. Thank you for that detail, Gary. Thank you. So moving on to our next question. Steve, this might be one that you can pick up. This person is asking, looking at your environmental plans, it looks like you're going to be planting trees at the bottom of Bowsden Lane in Shoreham. Can you confirm that?
Yes, I believe that's correct. That's near Great Crabbleswood, I believe. Yes, the area is proposed for ancient woodland compensation and other woodland planting. It's probably worth just pointing out that if people want specifics, there's a really good interactive tool on our consultation website where you can put in your address or particular location you're interested in, and it will take you to that location and show you exactly what is proposed in that area. So perhaps give that a try. But hopefully I'll answer your question. Yes, that there is planting proposed in that area. But for more detail, please do try visiting the website. There's a really good tool on there.
Can I just add to that, because I think the one thing that is in there, there's a little measuring tool. So if you wanted to find out how far you are away from something, there's a ruler. If you click on the ruler, you can then actually get the distance away. So it's actually quite a handy little thing to have.
hopefully that'll be useful for some of the listeners. Gary, I think this next question is probably for you. It's about noise barriers. What will the proposed noise barriers look like? This person says, we've read in the documents that they'll be 1 meter in height. Will that really make much difference for noise mitigation? Their question.
Yeah, I mean, what we've done is obviously we've done a noise assessment and we've identified where we need the noise barriers. They're likely to be made of timber, but they can actually be of some other material. I mean, they sometimes use recyclable materials, but it could also be a mound if that was suitable in that particular location. I mean, they will be designed to be sympathetic with the surrounding area. I mean, we're in an AONB in certain areas, so we've got to take consideration of that. And the noise barrier size and location will be determined by, the noise modelling, the local topography, the traffic forecasts, and our barrier locations are informed by the modelling. I mean, the location of them will be driven exactly by the modelling.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you. A question has come in now about why we're consulting in the middle of a global pandemic. And this person is saying, why are we doing it? Because it's excluding some people from participating. And there are some people who are not technically minded to access online documents or webinars like we're doing this evening, and who prefer that face-to-face interaction to ask their questions and view the documents. I can take that one. That's something we completely understand. But of course, given the current constraints, we have been unable to have public information events, and we've been unable to have deposit locations where we've been able to leave printed documents. But what we have done is we've worked completely in alignment with the government's guidelines about how to engage with the public and carry out consultations like this in a COVID world. This guidance has been emerging gradually over the time that we were planning this consultation, and we were completely in step, if not a little ahead of that, to be honest. But I would like to reassure people that we've taken a lot of steps to make sure that people who don't want to do a webinar or who don't want to engage online or go on our virtual consultation platform do have the opportunity to access printed materials. So to do that, what we did is we actually announced the consultation early this time, which is not something that we've done before, and we gave people an opportunity to order printed copies of all the materials well in advance of the consultation, so by the time they arrived they had the full amount of time in which to digest them. On top of that, we also did a lot of standard promotion through the media and local websites, and of course landowners who have a particular interest in the detail of some of the consultation, they have been written to specifically with maps and letters by our land team. What we also did is we have leafleted over 135,000 people who live close to the route. So they've got paper copies of information about what the consultation is about and how they can access more information. And of course, even if people have had a look at the printed materials or even online materials, there is always the opportunity just to pick up the phone to us through our telephone surgery service and ask us a question, no matter how detailed or no matter how big. And we can then put people directly in touch with experts from that area who can best answer that question. So I think I'd like to reassure people that they don't actually just have to go online to either look at materials or give feedback. They can access printed materials, and they can pick up the phone, and they can give us their response just simply by calling us. So we've definitely done, excuse me, we've definitely done as best that we possibly can to make sure that those people who aren't as digitally comfortable do have access to the materials. I hope that's reassuring for the person who asked that question. So, excuse me, I'll move on to the next one now. I think this is a question again for you, Gary. This person is asking, will the green bridge over the Lower Thames crossing at Thong Lane be 84 metres wide with it being moved further north?
Yeah, I mean, the bridge width won't change. It'll remain at the 84 meters that we had at the supplementary consultation. I mean, we've moved it 20 meters further north, and it's because it clashed with a gantry. But the width, I just want to make it absolutely clear, the width is the length along the LTC main line. It's not the actual width from edge of cutting to edge of cutting. So it will remain at the 84 meters.
Thanks, Gary. Thank you for that. And Steve, we've had a couple of questions come in about construction itself, asking if we're planning to change our working hours, that's one, and what we'll do to limit disruption to those who are living near the construction sites, such as residents who live on one area that's been mentioned is Castle Lane.
Yeah, okay. Well, first of all, let me just acknowledge that building a project like Lower Thames Crossing will not be without disruption, and we apologise for that. And we're looking at as many ways as we can of keeping that disruption to a minimum. With regards to the working hours, no, we've not changed our plans that we set out previously, I think at supplementary consultation earlier this year. So those working hours remain unchanged. I just want to point you though towards a very important document that we submit as part of our planning application, our development consent order, and that's called the Code of Construction Practice. And that document sets out a lot of detail about what the contractors will have to do with regards to mitigating noise, for example, with temporary noise barriers and earth bunds, dealing with construction traffic by using haul routes adjacent to the Lower Thames Crossing corridor to try and minimise traffic on existing roads. Dust suppression, so sending out vehicles with bowsers to spray to minimise the dust that could be an impact, and generally just phasing the construction work to try and mitigate impacts as far as reasonably practical. So I hope that gives you a bit of reassurance that it is quite a robust document, the Code of Construction Practice, and it does go into a lot of detail, and it will be publicly available soon when we submit it for our development consent order.
Indeed it will. Thanks, Steve. Okay, a question's come in now about carbon. Someone's asking, please, can we estimate the carbon footprint of the Lower Thames Crossing and explain the percentage that will be offset by mitigation? That's something that's really important to us and indeed to Highways England as a whole. And some people may remember that back in 2018, when we published what we call our PEER, our preliminary environmental impact report, we did give an early indication of the carbon emissions that might be needed for the construction and operation of Lower Thames Crossing. Now that estimate was 60 million tonnes over 60 years, but since then we've actually, in the light of all the updates and the refinements, we've been continually updating that estimate and improving the forecasting on that. And this is an area that is moving very, very fast. And everything that we're doing, we are designing to make sure that the Lower Thames Crossing not only mitigates environmental impacts as far as possible, but every aspect of design and construction and operation will minimise our carbon footprint. And we're going to be setting ourselves some tough targets over that. There will be an opportunity for people to read more information that will become publicly available in our carbon report, which will be published as part of our development consent order, which I think Steve referred to earlier when he was talking about the Code of Construction Practice. So once we publish that later on this year, that will contain some more up-to-date information. But even beyond that, I think it's important to stress that at every stage throughout the consenting period and as we go into construction and through the construction period, we will be doing everything we possibly can to look for innovation and every opportunity to minimise our carbon footprint, and we'll be explaining everything that we're doing as we go through, right the way through construction, so that people have a much clearer idea of how we are minimizing our carbon footprint. Doesn't give you any technical answers, that response, but hopefully that gives you an idea of the work that we're doing currently and that we're going to continue to do on what we recognize is a really, really important subject. Okay, another question now, Steve. Can you pick this one up? This person has said Chalk Park was mentioned in the last consultation, but the words appear to have disappeared from the maps associated with this design refinement consultation. Given the lack of explanation of the meaning of Chalk Park last time, this person is saying, what can or should we understand about our plans for that area? Do you know anything about that area, Steve?
Yeah, sure. Chalk Park is still a family part of our plans. It's not in our design refinement consultation because we haven't changed it. So it's still as presented at supplementary consultation, but perhaps I'll just explain a little bit more about what it is. So essentially, there's the proposal to use some of the material that we excavate from the cutting on the approach to the tunnel on the south side, so that area sort of north of Thong Lane over Lower Thames Crossing, to create a landscaped area to the north and west of the southern tunnel entrance. So it will be an informal public space. It would use a mixture of chalk, grassland, woodland, other suitable habitats, and the intention is really to provide a nice amenity space for the public, and to improve local biodiversity and ecological connectivity. So yes, it's very much a part of our plan still. And as I say, the reason it's not in the design refinement consultation is because we're not proposing to change it.
Thanks, Steve. I think I've got to apologise here, actually. I think I might have got a number wrong, which is not unusual for me. In the previous answer, when we were talking about carbon, I think what I should have said was 6 million tonnes over 60 years. My apologies. My memory is not what it should be, clearly. Gary, a question for you now, moving on. This person is asking, at the end of the houses on the north side of Lower Higham Road, at the east end, there's a public pathway that local people call the Landway, leading to the railway and across the canal. This is local people's way to the Thames. Will they still be, they're asking, will they still be able to use this throughout the construction period?
Yeah, no, I mean, on all the public rights of way during the construction period, we're trying to keep them open, and so I think this one doesn't appear to be in our development boundary. However, I think if you like more detail on the public rights of way, I think the best thing to do would be to call us on the 0300 123 5000 number, and we'll arrange a call back to discuss it in more detail. I think that's probably the best way to get a full and proper answer on that particular
it's quite
question.
specific, isn't it?
Yeah.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you. Steve, a question about the Green Bridge. Why has the Green Bridge moved further north, opening local people up allegedly to more noise and air pollution? Can you answer that?
Okay. Does it say which Green Bridge? I presume it's the one over Lower Thames Crossing, the Thong Lane.
I would imagine it's Thong Lane, but it's not specified.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll assume it's that one.
I'm pretty sure it is that one, isn't it? I think.
Okay. So I'll assume that the question refers to the Thong Lane bridge over Lower Thames Crossing, which we are indeed moving 20 metres north. There are a number of reasons for doing this. The first reason was that we had a clash between the bridge and a proposed gantry. The gantry has important signage and variable message signage on it for users of Lower Thames Crossing, and that gantry has to be placed a certain distance back from the tunnel entrance. and so we had a bit of a clash there. We also had an issue with the power lines that were to be diverted across that location, and the span between the two towers was too long, and it was restricting the overhead cables were restricting the planting that we could do on the green bridge, which is a bit of an issue for a green bridge. So one further issue was the geometry change to Lower Thames Crossing that was described in the presentation, where we wanted to make a small alignment change vertically to Lower Thames Crossing to the southbound alignment, and that was to improve visibility. So these factors together, the alignment change, vertical alignment change, the power lines that were previously restricting the planting that we could do on the bridge, and the gantry, these things together meant that we wanted to move the bridge, just shove it 20 meters north, basically. In terms of noise, air pollution, shouldn't make any difference at all to that, because it's the green bridge that we're moving, not Lower Thames Crossing. So there's no expectation that it will have any impact on noise or air pollution.
Thank you, Steve. Thanks very much.
Okay.
Okay, another quite specific local question that's come in here, Gary. I don't know if you can pick this one up. The question is, how will these changes affect the Cobham Parish boundaries, the boundaries of which stretch from the A2 Central Reservation to Ifield, Meatham and Luddsdown? How will those changes affect Luddsdown and Cuxton? Do you know the detail of that
I hope we've covered some of the key points already in the webinar, but I suggest it'd be please do look at a guide, and particularly the interactive maps on the website for more and specific areas you're interested in. There's some good information on there, and I think it's a good source of actually finding out what has actually happened within that particular specific area. None of the refinements being consulted upon are anticipated to affect Luddsdown or Cuxton, because in fact, south of the A2, what we've done is actually removed a lot of the temporary land that was required for the utility diversions. So the refinements south of the A2, the Central Reserve, include reduction in ancient woodland compensation near Henhurst Road and Church Road due to the presence of the cultural heritage building there to maintain open space, and a few utility works needed. And there's a couple of substations near Cobham Service Station, which are, again, they're the 3 metre by 3 metres in size, within an area of 5 by 4 meters to allow for planting around the outside of it. So those are the key things I can think of. But again, I would stress to go back, and if you can use the site and the interactive maps, they have got specific detailed information in there. But again, if you do need to have a more precise answer, please call in and arrange a callback.
Thanks, Gary. Steve, a question now about woodland planting. This person is asking, mitigation woodland planting seems to have been reduced despite ancient woods still being destroyed. How do we intend to offset the adverse environmental impact and the huge carbon footprint of the LTC? Well, we've talked a little bit about the carbon footprint, not in any detail, but can you address the issue of mitigation and woodland planting, Steve?
Yeah, I won't go into the carbon footprint again, because I think you've covered that already, Sarah, with an earlier question. But yeah, I think the one good thing about this design refinement consultation is that we're announcing a significant reduction in impacts from utility works, which does have a beneficial impact on the environment. In so much that we're not affecting as much of the environmental constraints as we previously were expecting to. So there is a small good news story there. In terms of reducing compensation planting. So because we're reducing the impact that we previously thought we were going to have, that we don't have to do quite so much compensation planting. However, I think we're trying to work continuously with all the stakeholders to identify appropriate measures for mitigation, for loss of trees, etc. Some measures we're looking at include the translocation of ancient woodland soils, which is really quite a complex thing to do. And so all our proposals will be covered in the our planning application, the development consent order, which will be published later this year. In the meantime, we'll continue to work hard with local stakeholders, national stakeholders, to refine our proposals. And if anybody, perhaps the person asking that question, needs any more specifics about specific areas of environmental mitigation, then the very best thing they can do is call our helpline number and ask for a call back from one of the environmental specialists, and then they'll be able to give you some more specific information about what we're trying to do.
Thanks, Steve. We've had a few questions come in about specific land and property issues from people who've had correspondence from us, and they've got some queries about how their land or property might be affected. For obvious reasons, we don't want to discuss individual land and property owners' questions in a public forum like this. So if anyone has got any queries about land or property, or any questions about the material that we've sent them, or any issues about blight or anything like that, please, I would recommend that they talk to one of our specialists in land and property, and they can do that simply by arranging a call back by ringing one of the land and property team on 0300 123 3000. I'm sure you'd understand that we don't want to discuss individual landowners and property owners' concerns in a forum like that. Okay, I think we've got time for one more question. This is again about raising the level under Thong Lane. If we needed to increase visibility, Gary, I think this is one for you. If we needed to increase visibility at Thong Lane, why is it that we couldn't just lower the road level elsewhere instead of raising it? And there's a supplementary bit to that as well. The proposed gantry that requires the moving of the bridge, which Steve was just talking about, will this protrude above the land level?
I'll deal with the gantry first. The gantry won't protrude above the actual adjacent land level, because we're in about it's about 9-10 meters of cutting at that particular that location, which means we're beneath the ground level. But as far as the visibility and changing the alignment, the problem we've got with it's got to connect with the adjacent alignments, and what we've done is we've taken out a sort of a sort of a dip in the road, and so that's what's caused us to actually raise the alignment in that location, and it's raised over a sort of a length from, it starts just north of Thong Lane bridge over LTC, and it's most probably over about an 800 meter length, where it goes from tying in exactly to the current alignment, and then it rises up to just south of Thong Lane Bridge to about 2.6 meters. But the problem is it would have affected a much longer length if we hadn't done that. So it's because of the constraints either side of the location.
Thank you, Gary. I think we've got just about enough time to squeeze in one more question, Steve, if you can manage this. And this question says, what is the shaded spur of permanent acquisition through the children's play park in Riverview Park? I think it's called Michael Gardens. Do we have any more details on the purpose of why we're acquiring that? Will the footpath be turned into an access road? Steve, can you shed any light on that person's queries?
Yeah, no, I don't think the footpaths will not be used for access for vehicles. I believe from what colleagues have told me that we're proposing to upgrade. It's an upgrade of a footpath basically that runs through Michael Garden's play area. So it will connect with other footpaths across the area. And once upgrade works are complete, the path and play area would be open to the public. So no, there's no proposal to turn the footpath into an access road, and it's just a simple upgrade piece of work.
Thank you very much for that, Steve. I'm afraid that is all we've got time for this evening. But just before we go, we'll just give you a very quick reminder that the design refinement consultation does close in just under 2 weeks' time on the 12th of August. So you've still got time to respond to the consultation, either through our website, by post, or of course by email. And as a reminder, if you know anyone who doesn't have internet access or prefers not to use the internet, they of course can give us a call, as we've said, on 0300 123 5000 to provide a response to the consultation over the phone. So that's about all from us this evening. I want to thank you all for attending and taking time out of your evening to learn more about the consultation. On behalf of myself, my fellow panelists, Gary and Steve, and of course the backroom team, without whom this simply wouldn't have happened. Just want to say thank you very much for joining us to discuss the latest proposals for the Lower Thames Crossing. So please do stay safe and have a great evening. Bye-bye.